My name is Cadence. I work the closing shift at a small dive bar in the quieter part of my town. The place is right off the highway, but the parking lot also has a back entrance that's available to the general town. It's nothing fancy, just a dimly lit spot where the regulars know each other by name, and the jukebox has been playing the same rotation of classic rock for years. Most of our customers are locals, truckers passing through, and the occasional lost tourist looking for a stiff drink. I like it though. The routine is predictable, the tips are surprisingly decent, and I've learned how to handle the usual bar crowd. The talkers, the flirters, the quiet drinkers, and the ones who just want to be left alone. Weekends are obviously a lot more hectic. But the thing about working during the week is that I'm expected to work my night shifts alone. I don't even get a bar back to pop in now and again. Yeah, it's obviously easier work and slower during the week, but I miss the company of my coworkers. I tend to be pretty vigilant during my shifts because we do get the occasional bar fight considering the kinds of crowds we attract. That's why I clocked the guy immediately. It was sometime after 1 in the morning on a Tuesday when he walked in. If I had to guess, I'd say he was in his late 40s, but he was extremely clean-cut and well-groomed. Not the kind of look you'd expect from a guy his age in an area like this. He was wearing a black turtleneck underneath a black trench coat. Definitely well-dressed, but casual about it. I'm not sure how to explain it, but he had this aura of sophistication about him that makes you think of money. Real money, not the loud look-at-me kind. He glanced around slowly before walking swiftly over to the bar and taking a seat. I also remember him having oddly good posture, but that's neither here nor there. When I walked over, he glanced at the bottles behind me and ordered something top shelf without hesitation. As I was pouring his drink, he asked me if I liked working here with a smile on his face. It was a normal enough question, so I answered him honestly. I told him yeah, and smiled back. I then made a joke about being a bartender or something. I wish I could say I got a creepy vibe from him, but that's not the energy he was giving off. He genuinely seemed like a stand-up guy, kind of like the single dad at his kid's baseball game that gives the whole team a high five. He chatted with me for a bit, which I didn't mind since the bar was pretty quiet at that point. Eventually, he asked me if I ever thought about doing something bigger, which I admit was somewhat bizarre. Again though, not a totally creepy question given the nature of the situation. I gave him my standard bartender smile and told him I was happy for now. He nodded and sipped his drink, seemingly disappointed at my answer for reasons I didn't understand. After a long pause, he asked me what time I got off out of nowhere. That question surprised me. I hadn't picked up any kind of flirting from him whatsoever, so I was a little disappointed to discover that our conversation had just been another one of those empty attempts at getting my number. I smiled and gave him a vague answer, trying to brush him off in a friendly way without seeming uptight. Before he could answer, I busied myself and began wiping down the counter, but he didn't press. He just smiled like he already knew, then drained his drink and pulled out a crisp $100 bill, laying it gently on the bar like it was nothing. Then, without another word, he walked out into the night. I didn't really know what to make of the encounter. I know it sounds like nothing, but his demeanor was just so far off my radar that I was intrigued. Either way, I figured I was never going to see him again, and got on with my life. As it would turn out though, I was wrong. About a week later, he came back. Only this time, he wasn't alone. There was a woman with him. She drew my attention since I hadn't seen her before. She looked like she was in her mid-30s, and was dressed in a way that didn't quite match her age. Trendy, but off, like someone trying a little too hard to blend in with a younger crowd. I watched her closely as the two of them approached the bar. Everything about her seemed calculated, from the way she smiled too easily to the way she leaned against the bar like we were already friends. As I was setting down napkins in front of them, the very first thing she said to me wasn't a hello or a drink order, but a compliment. She put on this overly joyful smile and said, "You're so pretty." Her fingers brushed against my arm as she said it, lingering just a second longer than normal. I laughed and thanked her, but I could instantly tell that something was off about this woman. The man didn't speak, which I thought was also a little strange given that he had been so talkative last time. They ordered drinks and poured them, and that's when questions came flooding in. The woman asked me how long I'd been working here, along with how old I was and a bunch of other small talk questions like that. I answered in short, polite sentences, but I got the sense that this wasn't small talk. She was studying me. At one point, she looked over at the man, and it seemed like they were communicating despite not speaking. She looked back at me and told me that she ran an exclusive event club. She leaned in a bit as she said it, lowering her voice as if to prevent her being overheard by another patron. She told me that she's always looking for young, fun people for private parties, and that I'd make a killing, 10 grand for a weekend. I let out a small, forced laugh and told her it sounded too good to be true. She insisted that it was real, and told me that a bunch of girls like me worked for them. Her smile never faltered at any moment, which was starting to creep me out. She steered the conversation back to the job, circling around the same words. Fun, safe, exclusive. Then, casually, she said, "You should step outside for a second. There's someone who can explain it better." My pulse kicked up. I wasn't playing around at that point. I didn't even bother pretending like I wasn't creeped out. "I'm good," I said in a firm voice. No smile on my face this time. Just then, a group of customers walked in, laughing and talking loudly. The woman's expression changed in an instant, her friendly mask slipping just slightly before she turned to the man beside her. Without another word, they left. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't unsettled after that. Those random people had just propositioned me for God knows what. I told my coworkers and my boss about the situation, and we all agreed to keep an eye out should those people return. My boss assured me that he was always a 15-minute drive away should I need him, and the bar's security cameras were typically enough to deter any misbehavior. There wasn't really much I could do beyond that. It's not like those people had done anything illegal. I tried to push it out of my head, but a few nights later, after closing, I saw the car. It was parked across the street, engine off, just sitting there. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, but the feeling of being watched crawled over my skin like static. As I walked to my car, I kept my head down, my keys clutched tight in my hand. When I pulled out of the lot, I checked my mirrors. The car followed. It stayed back just enough to avoid suspicion, but every turn I made, it was still there. I took a random turn onto a side street, and it followed. Another, still there. I started freaking out internally. I knew it was them. I forced myself to stay calm, to think. Then, without hesitating, I navigated and pulled into the parking lot of a police station, gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles practically turned white. The second I pulled in, the car sped off. Nothing happened after that for a while, but I knew it wasn't over. It turned out I was right. It was a slow weekday shift, barely anyone coming in. By midnight, I was wiping down the counter, half thinking about closing early, when the door creaked open. It was the woman. I immediately sent my boss a text as inconspicuously as I possibly could. I looked back up, and the woman was staring at me with that same artificial smile. She walked slowly to the bar and sat down with her hands folded neatly. I was debating just telling her to leave when she said, "Thought I'd come check on you." My stomach started twisting, but I did my best to hide it. I told her we were about to close and that she had to leave, but she made this pouty face and asked for just one old-fashioned. I thought about denying her, but I figured pouring the drink would stall her long enough for my boss to arrive. So I turned around and got started, trying to keep my cool. And then I heard it. The soft, unmistakable click of the front door shutting. I whipped around. The woman was gone. I felt this awful pit in my stomach as I stepped toward the entrance. Through the glass, I saw it. A black van idling just outside. Without thinking, I locked the door as quickly as I could. But then, metal rattling from the back door. Someone was trying to get in. I didn't think. I grabbed the heaviest thing I could, a metal shaker, and clutched it like a weapon as I dialed 911 with my other hand. There was no way the police would get there in time, so I thought about making a run for it out the front door, but I didn't for whatever reason. I was bracing myself for a fight when I saw headlights pulling into the lot. It was my boss. The sounds on the back door suddenly stopped, and a few seconds later, the van pulled out of the lot with a screech. I embraced my boss and told him what had happened, and he said he had gotten the license plate of the van as it was leaving. When the cops arrived, my boss reviewed the security footage with them. It was worse than I had imagined. Just before the woman left, the cameras had captured two masked figures crouching near the front door, waiting. There was another person in the back who was banging on the door with his fist, clearly trying to flush me out to the front. It was downright horrifying. To make matters worse, the plate number my boss had caught turned out to be unregistered. It's been quite a while since this incident, but no progress has been made. The only good news to come out of the whole thing is that my boss doesn't make me work alone anymore. Despite that, I'm still extremely uneasy anytime I'm scheduled for a night shift. I still question how they knew I'd be working alone. It doesn't make any sense. Even now, I often think about what would have happened had I given in to fear and run out the front door.